Hello, and welcome to today's ResNexus webinar, Know Your Audience with Google Analytics. And this is going to be an introductory webinar to Google Analytics, whether you're new to it all or whether you're familiar with the old version or trying to catch up. Now that Google Analytics 4 has phased out the old version, it's more stable and more people are using it. My name is Gavin Wadsworth. I'm a hospitality researcher and content writer for ResNexus, and I'm pleased to be presenting for you today. I hope you get a lot of value out of this webinar. Alright, since we are starting with the basics, I'm going to go over the marketing funnel before we go any further. The marketing funnel is a model we use to describe how people turn into customers for your business. Why is it a funnel? Because at each stage, the number of prospects shrinks. Kind of like how you might start reading a book and get through the first few pages and put it down. A different book, you get through the first few chapters and put it down. A different book, you read it all the way through. With that last one, you made it all the way through the funnel. The other ones, you dropped off earlier on. So what are the stages? Well, there are a ton of different models out there, but this is a pretty basic three-stage model, and it's the one that Google Analytics refers to. And it starts with acquisition. This is when potential customers reach your website. How do most people find out about your property? Do they find it on TripAdvisor, or by Googling places to stay in your city? Or are they just searching your property by name? Maybe they first saw you on social media, or maybe they clicked on one of your Google ads. And you can measure the effectiveness of your advertising efforts. Maybe it turns out that most people who click on certain ads never actually follow through with a purchase. That's money you're spending that doesn't have a good return on investment. The next phase is engagement. This is the stage where the user is interacting with your online presence in some way. Maybe they're considering staying at your property. They're at least curious to learn more. So this might be users who click through to your booking engine, look at your inventory, maybe add an item to their cart to see what the cost would be. Understanding why people fall off this part of the funnel is crucially important because it can reveal so much about your marketing efforts. You can identify bottlenecks and issues and figure out how to solve them to improve your conversion rate. And finally, there's monetization and retention. This is where you prompt the user to go through with a purchase, where they turn into a customer for your business. Everyone who makes it this far performed the kind of action you were looking for, whether that's downloading an app or subscribing to a newsletter or buying a product. For our purposes, we're mostly going to consider reservations at your property as conversions. As an example of how people fall off right before this stage of the marketing funnel, I actually have a personal one. So when I'm looking at a service on a website that interests me, maybe it's a monthly subscription, and it says it's a free trial, well, I might click on it. I'll look around the website to learn more about it, see if it's for me. I'll make it all the way through to the free trial page. But then they require me to enter my credit card information in order to access my free trial. So 9 times out of 10, I just close that tab. I don't want the hassle of digging out my credit card and setting a calendar alert to remind myself to cancel the subscription before it charges my card. I'll just look elsewhere for another service, 9 times out of 10. And of course, anyone who makes it through to the bottom of the funnel means growth for your business. This marketing funnel process happens whether you're paying attention or not. But without good data, you would have no idea how many people thought about making a reservation at your property but didn't follow through. You would have no idea what changed their mind. You would have no idea how they came to your website in the first place. So that's where Google Analytics comes in. Knowledge is power, and understanding how people discover, engage, and ultimately book with your property will allow you to help improve your funnel. And the way you improve it is by increasing the number of people that start the funnel and making it easier and more enticing for people to continue through the funnel, so fewer people drop off throughout the process. And you maximize the number of people who make it to the monetization and retention stage. In other words, you can use the data you gather from Google Analytics to improve your website, your marketing, ad placements, and more to ultimately earn more revenue and grow your business. So first, let's briefly define Google Analytics. Simply put, Google Analytics is Google's digital analytics tool. There are others out there, but we're going to focus on Google today. And digital analytics is the collection, measurement, and analysis of data from digital sources. And again, the purpose behind digital analytics is to ultimately increase your conversions and revenue. Google Analytics has had several different versions and iterations over the years. Until a couple years ago, Universal Analytics was the version in use. However, due to growing privacy concerns and regulations worldwide, Google had to be more careful about the kinds of data they collect. To put it simply, the name of the game is to gather user data that can help your business make smarter decisions, but you should not be able to use that data to identify individual users. If that sounds complicated, that is because it is. Anyway, the latest iteration is Google Analytics 4, or just GA4 for short. Although especially now that Universal Analytics is almost fully phased out, people just call it Google Analytics again. UA is no longer gathering data, but you can still access your Universal Analytics property to access historical data, and you can do that up until July 1st in 2024. If you had a UA property, a GA4 property has probably already been created for you based on the old one, unless of course you decided to opt out of that. So from here on out for this presentation, whenever I say Google Analytics, I'm referring to GA4, aka the only active version of Google Analytics. Rather than going over the many differences between the two systems, I'm just going to start from zero. So whether you're a Universal Analytics veteran, you're trying to learn the new system, or if this is your first time getting started with Google Analytics, this will be a breakdown of how this latest iteration works. So we're going to start with the Google Analytics account structure, and it's here to help keep things organized. So at the top is your account, and under the account are one or more properties. So if you're a campground operator with two different locations, maybe one of them is a tent campground and the other is an RV park in the valley, then you would probably have one property for each of these, especially if they have different websites. Basically, properties allow you to segment your business into categories based on whatever your needs are. And then under property is data streams. A data stream is a website or app that you want to track user data for. Odds are your structure will be pretty simple. Your account is for your business as a whole. Let's say you manage a bed and breakfast. That would be a property under your account. Then the data stream for that property would be your bed and breakfast website. If you had another B&B or a vacation rental or something with its own website, you might have a separate property and data stream for that as well. So how does Google start collecting data for you? Well, it all starts with a tag. And a tag is a piece of code that goes on your website. It basically signals to Google Analytics to track data for that page. So you would add this tag to all of the pages on your website that are public-facing that you want to track data for. So all your blog posts, your About Us page, your home page, your nearby attractions page, and others. If you know your way around HTML coding, or you have a staff member who does, you can add it yourself, or you can just use a tag management system like Google Tag Manager, which is free to use. So what data is sent over to Google Analytics? Well, there are basically two categories of data that it gathers, and those are users and events. If you're used to the old version of Google Analytics, this will seem pretty different from what you're used to. Everything in GA4 boils down to users and events. So user is pretty self-explanatory. It's a person who visits your website or app. And as a side note, that's actually another of the changes with GA4 is that it can gather data for both web and mobile apps. But we're obviously just going to focus on websites today. Now, when Google Analytics says user, what it actually means is active user. This is defined as the number of unique users who engaged with your site or app. So what that tag does to send over data is it logs a bunch of user events and sends them to Google Analytics to generate reports for you. So an event is basically whenever a user does something to interact with your website. So when someone lands on your website, that's an event. When they scroll to the bottom of a page, that's an event. When they watch a video on the page, that's another event. These are all examples of events that are automatically collected if you set up your data stream and tags. When you're setting up your Google Analytics, make sure you enable enhanced measurements. That's always a recommendation we make, because this allows you to measure a lot more events automatically. And then you can always disable any specific measurements later on if you don't want that particular data. Okay, so everything in Google Analytics is a user or an event, but that's not enough to make good data on its own. So that's why users and events have additional properties called parameters. So this basically tells you more about a particular user or event. And there are two types of parameter. There are dimensions and there are metrics. We'll go over them for you now. A dimension is an attribute of a user or event that helps you to categorize. So for example, if we were looking at data about a bag of fruit, the type of fruit could be a dimension. Whether the fruit is ripe or rotten could be another dimension. And the other parameter, metrics, helps you measure users and events. Metrics are always expressed as a number of some kind. So that could be just a number, or it could be a percentage, or a ratio, or an average. To go back to our fruit example, we might want to know how many fruits there are. That would be a metric because we're measuring something. To combine it with dimensions, we could ask how many fruits that are apples are in the bag. We could ask what percentage of fruits in the bag are rotten. These are all examples of combining a metric with a dimension. So you can see how when you combine the two, you're getting more information. So putting it all together, we have users who interact with your website. Their interactions are logged as events. And each user and event is categorized by dimensions. You can then use metrics to measure these users and events and turn it into data you can use to learn more about your audience and their behavior. So let's take a look at a few examples of powerful data you can gather using Google Analytics. As a side note, all the screenshots seen here are from the Google Analytics demo account, specifically for their Google Merch Store website. So yes, this is all real business data that you can view. You can generate your own reports and explore all the features of GA4 in a user-rich environment. And you can actually access this yourself. Just Google Analytics demo account and you should find it pretty quickly. Obviously, you can only join as a viewer role, so you can't change any of the settings or admin or anything like that. But you are free to play around with it as much as you want without fear of messing anything up. So this is a great way to find a user-rich environment to see what a lot of data looks like. All right, let's get back to this screenshot. What we can see here is an overview of user tech. So you can quickly see the number of users by platform, operating system, device type, browser, and more. At a glance here, we can see that Android has the most active users, and that desktop and mobile are by far the most common device categories. And at the bottom, we can see users by browser, as well as users by screen resolution. It might be a good idea to see what your website looks like on your most popular screen resolutions. Now, you might not have noticed, but there's a little downward arrow next to users on these reports. Whenever you see that, it means you can click it to open a drop-down menu of additional options. So let's select total revenue for each of these and see what we can learn. Now, this is very interesting. Before, Android was the #1 operating system, and mobile was a close second to desktop for device category. But that was just looking at volume of users. Now that we've switched them both to show us total revenue instead of users, we have an entirely different story. This tells us how much money we're making from this merch shop from users based on these dimensions. And even though Android was number 1 for user base, Macintosh users are the big spenders, followed by Chrome OS, then Windows, then Linux, then iOS, then Android at the very bottom. We can also see on the right that the vast majority of revenue came from desktop users. Even though mobile users visited the website quite a bit, it was the desktop users who actually made purchases. Traffic source is another important one to look for. How are people coming across your website in the first place? Here, we can see that direct traffic is the highest, followed by organic, and then cross-network. This data can help you measure the effectiveness of your SEO, your social media presence, and things like that. In that same vein, you can also link your Google Ads account to your Google Analytics property to help you see which ads are effective and by how much. This report shows you an in-depth breakdown of users and sessions from Google Ads by campaign, the total cost of those ads, the cost per click, and the number of conversions. If you're running a Google Ads campaign for your property, this would be essential data to have. You can quickly find out when you're preaching to the wrong audience, or where you might be able to put more of your advertising budget if something is paying off for you. Demographics is another good one, especially if you want to understand your audience more fully. You can view users by country, by city, by gender, by interests, by age, and by language, all on the overview page for user attributes. You might notice on this page these little alert icons. These indicate that Google Analytics is putting in some data thresholding. This basically means that Google is withholding some amount of data due to privacy concerns. I mentioned that earlier. That was part of the reason for the GA4 transition. Google does not want you to be able to infer anyone's identity using these reports, so it's there as a safety measure. For a report this large, it probably won't affect any of the data for your purposes, but if you're trying to look for all the male users from New York City on a certain day, you probably won't find much success because that information is too personal and too specific. Engagement overview is another good page to look at, since this lets you know how long users are spending on your website. If you're seeing a lot of 5 to 10 second sessions, users might be clicking onto your website thinking it was something else. Not all traffic is good traffic. If my website is for a food truck, but my metadata is talking all about a theme park, Google's not going to like that, and I'm probably going to be ranked lower in searches. This can also be a gauge for whether you're offering quality and engaging content on your website. A user journey where they land on your homepage and then they look at your property photos, maybe they swing by your blog, and then they click your nearby attractions page. That's a good session. But one where someone clicks on the homepage and then immediately leaves, something went wrong somehow. And the last tab we're going to look at for this presentation is conversions. A conversion is basically whenever a user does something you want them to, and you can customize what counts as a conversion and what doesn't in your settings. So usually this would be making a purchase or signing up for a newsletter, that kind of thing. But looking specifically at purchases, we can kind of see the funnel at work here. The most common event is view item, followed by first visit. So people are looking at items on the merch store more often than they're showing up for the first time. And then as you go down the list, you get to view cart, add to cart, purchase, and begin checkout. So you can see how people fall off the funnel as they go. Did you ever add something to your cart only to see the final price and decide not to go through with it? That could be a big part of what's happening here. Alright, we've gone over a lot of the basic report views that you can find just by clicking around for a few minutes on Google Analytics. But as one final word of advice, we recommend that you try out the smart search bar at the top of your Google Analytics. If you're trying to find something specific and you're getting stuck, you're getting lost, you don't know where to go, you'd be surprised by how often you can just type what you need into the search bar, and it'll bring up what you need instantaneously. For example, you can type something like top events by users in San Francisco, and Google Analytics will show you some of the reports most likely close to what you're looking for, and may also give you a tailored insight seen at the top of the results. And if you click that, you'll get exactly that report on the right hand side. That's a lot of power you have at your disposal in just a few seconds. All right, with that, we've come to the end of this brief crash course in Google Analytics 4 to kind of get you started. Obviously, we can go a lot further with this, but we just don't have enough time to do a full training in how to use Google Analytics top to bottom. But hopefully, for any of you who are trying to get started, this is a good way to kind of get your feet wet. I'll get to the Q&A in just a moment, so feel free to start dropping your questions into the field provided. In the meantime, I'd like to say that if you enjoyed this webinar and would like to view any of our past ones, you can do so by going to our website, resnexus.com. When you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a Webinars button, which will take you to our entire library of past webinars, and you can also register for upcoming webinars on this page. All right, and with that, we have come to the Q&A. I'll do my best to answer your questions to the best of my ability, but I am by no means an expert in GA4. I've been studying and researching for a while, but more often than not, I may refer you to a support article of some kind from Google, but I will do my best.
And I've actually also got our resident Google Analytics expert, Matt Huntington, here to help me out with a Q&A today.
Hey everyone, go ahead and throw your questions in the chat and we'll see what we can do to help you out.
All right, we got one question. How does ResNexus hosting services integrate with Google Analytics?
So as far as hosting goes, there's different types of hosting. There's our booking engine, and then there's also website hosting. So if you have a ResNexus website, there is a field in the advanced settings that you go and just drop in your GA4 ID. There's a spot for your AdWords ID, or if you're using advanced implementations like Google Tag Manager, there's a spot for that. In the ResNexus admin, for where you manage your property and your bookings, you just go click on the settings gear icon on the top, and then there's an analytics button. And yeah, you go to those analytics settings, and there's a lot of very helpful, up-to-date information there, and that will get all of your analytics data and the e-commerce data and all the fun new enhanced conversion events flowing into your Analytics 4 account or your AdWords account or Tag Manager account.
All right, we got another one. How often should we be observing the analytics data?
That's a great question. It depends, like on your marketing efforts. You know, say you do you boost a Facebook post or you do an email blast. You know, it's nice to look at the real-time data and see how people are interacting and responding to your marketing efforts. And then there's one thing to keep in mind as far as e-commerce transactions go and how analytics for how they use machine learning to stitch user sessions together where, let's say someone does a search on their phone and finds your bed and breakfast on their phone, but then they get another idea and they open up their laptop and do another search. Well, Google uses machine, it with old universal analytics, Google would count that as two different users and two different page views. And so universal analytics, the data has been inflated for years. And that's one of the beauties of better understanding the buyer's journey. The beauty is with Google Analytics 4 is after a couple days, it will stitch those sections together and say, hey, this is the same user that looked it up on the phone and then their laptop. And so you'll see less users overall, but it usually can take, they say 48 hours, but I can see it changed about every week. And so, I like to check on a weekly basis to, just kind of just get a quick pulse on things. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Give it time to fully populate everything.
Yeah, to stitch all the sessions together, all the machine learning.
Yeah, so maybe you make it a habit once a week on a certain day of the week. You check out your Google Analytics.
Yeah, that's what I like to do.
Great. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. We'll give it another minute or two for people to submit those. But in the meantime, I'd like to say thanks everyone for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, I saw that you're still in here. If you're listening, let me know how your data is looking now that we got your account settings dialed in. So it'd be interesting to see what's going on. So feel free to shoot me an email or whatnot, and we can get you helped out if stuff's still not flowing from your marketing website to the booking engine data that's in Google Analytics. So anyway, it'd be cool to talk to you and see if that's all working.
All right, sounds good. And it looks like we have come to the end of our questions for today. It says will do.
Cool. We'll talk to you soon, Mark.
Great. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.